Hey there folks, Caleb Downing with SDI, and today I'm going to talk to you real quick about trigger slap, particularly in PCCs. Let's get into it. Alright, so trigger slap, real quick. What is trigger slap? Trigger slap is generally, or not really generally, it's whenever you're firing your firearm, you fire, the gun cycles, and right when it cycles and that action finishes its motion, or really halfway through the motion, you get a very sharp, painful snap or flick or slap from the trigger. The trigger flicks your finger and it really doesn't feel good. It gets to the point to where it can become painful. And if you shoot enough and you don't fix this problem, I mean, you can get bruises and whatnot on your finger. And you might be thinking, oh, just suck it up and be a man and shoot the gun and whatever. Okay, that's nice and some fun machismo stuff, but that is a symptom of a problem with your PCC, all right? That's not something you should just overlook. That means that you have a problem. So let's talk about that problem. So if you talk about how trigger slap feels, what is trigger slap? What is happening? What's going on here? So to kind of help demonstrate this a little bit, I got some different lowers here. These are both PCC lowers. This guy here has a traditional mil-spec trigger in it. Hopefully we can see that. It's got a mil-spec trigger in it. And what happens when the firearm cycles is the bolt or bolt carrier, whatever it happens to be, depending on what it is, but the carrier moves back after you fire the weapon, resets the trigger, continues moving back into the buffer tube assembly, and then goes forward, and then you can fire the weapon again. What happens with trigger slap is that carrier is moving in excess speed. It's moving way too quick. And because, again, PCCs in general, they're direct blowbacks, so that bolt carrier is going to be moving relatively quick anyway, as opposed to like a regular traditional AR-15. And so when that carrier is moving in excess, in too much speed, what happens is when it comes back to reset the trigger, it throws that hammer way fast. Way faster, that's not really proper English, but it throws it way faster than it's supposed to, and it can actually, I'm going to try to show it, I don't know if it's going to actually show up very well or not, but when this hammer comes back, it can, if it pushes too much, it's really hard to show it, but if it pushes too much, too far back, the spur, this little pointy portion of the hammer here, actually contacts part of the trigger and pushes that trigger forward mechanically, right? And so that's why it really is a fast, hard, little flick or slap to your trigger finger, right? So that's the problem. So there is a problem. It's not something you should just man up and shoot the gun. No, there is an actual problem. Your carrier is moving too fast. So 3 different things that you can do to fix this, or really 2 different things you can do to fix this. One thing is a Band-Aid. We'll talk about the Band-Aid last. You need to slow that carrier down, right? So 2 main things you can do. You can add weight to the system, meaning on a lot of AR-9s, their bolts, they actually have a weight in the back of the bolt, and most of the times they're actually shipped with a weight in the back of the bolt. Sometimes you can add a heavier weight, or sometimes if your bolt doesn't have one for some reason, you can simply add a weight to the back of that bolt and call it good, and it's probably going to be fine. If that's already been done, you can move back to the buffer assembly. All right, you can put in a heavier buffer. Now, AR-9s are not mil-spec, all right, and AR-10s are not mil-spec. There are times when you can get a extra heavy AR-10 buffer and run that in your system. Now you're going to have, since these are not mil-spec, they're not going to be advertised this way, but this is a way to get an extra heavy buffer and run it in your system to, again, add weight to the system and slow it down. That's something you're going to have to try. That's not something that you would just go buy any old AR-10 buffer and stick it in here. You're not going to be able to do that. This particular system uses a short buffer tube. This is not a standard buffer tube length. So I had to hunt around and find different buffers and things that would actually work in here anyway. Not standard AR-9, not standard AR-10, because there is no standard AR-9 or AR-10 buffer. It's not mil-spec. There's no spec standard. So you're going to have to find one that's going to work. The length and also the weight. And if you're having a faster carrier speed, you're going to need to add some extra weight. If you do that and it still is having problems doing the same thing, you can also add an extra heavy buffer spring. Again, talking about AR-9s and AR-10s being non-mil-spec, particularly AR-9s here, you're going to have to find a spring that fits your system properly, because sometimes when these companies put stuff together, especially if you get cheaper ones, you could accidentally get the wrong power spring or the wrong length spring put into your system, and that's going to cause some problems. So make sure you have the proper length and the proper strength spring. And sometimes you can add a heavy or an extra heavy power spring, and that again will help to slow down that system. Now, if you're still having problems, here is a little band-aid to help fix the symptom of the problem. It won't necessarily fix the problem, but to help fix the symptom of the problem, you can add a trigger to your system that does not have that big old spur coming out the back. See how this guy does not have a big old spur coming out the back? What that's gonna do is, since that spur is generally what flicks or hammers or hits the bottom of your trigger, and that's what causes that painful slap, if you have a trigger that does not have that long extra spur in the back, then when this guy cycles, even if he cycles too fast, that long spur is not going to come in contact with that part of the trigger, and so you're not going to feel the slap. Now, you might still be having excess speed in your carrier, and so you still need to figure something out. You still need to add weights or add spring power or whatever it might be. You still need to fix the problem, but this can put a band-aid on or fix the symptom, all right? So one major way that you're gonna know that you have this problem, really probably the only way you're gonna know that you have this problem, is by shooting your firearm. And that's very important. When you put things together, whether you're putting it together for yourself or maybe you're putting it together for a customer, you need to function check these things. And that doesn't mean just rack and call it good. You need to shoot the gun. You need to make sure that it's going to cycle properly. And another thing on top of all that, especially nowadays, everybody's getting these things. I love these things. And what are these things? I'm talking about suppressors. Suppressors add excess pressure to your system anyway. So if you have one of these guys, like if I had this guy, this is a 7.5 inch 9mm. If I had this guy perfectly tuned out and ready to go, no issues, and if this was a customer and I handed it back to him and then he got the firearm, put his can on it, and all of a sudden he's having trigger slap, well, that's because the system was tuned up and ready to go for an unsuppressed system. So make sure you test these things in the configuration that they're going to be shot, the same kind of ammo, and if they were using a suppressor, you know, make sure you test it with that on there. Just little things to know, little things to help you out along the way. Anyway, my name's Caleb Downing. I hope you found that interesting, hope you found it helpful, and hopefully we'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.